Wally is what you call a mountain magnet. He had to be up there.
I've managed to avoid it for so long, for whatever reasons.
Of course, his family came first. It was also evident that the mountains came second.
It'd be really cool if we could get out there and climb Sloan Peak.
I want to be up there where he was, and perhaps still is up there.
He was lost. They never found him.
It is unusual for someone to disappear without really a trace.
They've waited 40 years for answers. They've waited 40 years.
I think this is a lifetime in the making.
For this day.
Ever since I met him, he's always wanted to do this.
I haven't even been up here since the memorial service.
At the place where it all began,
and it has so many memories.
Dave and Steve Summers are back.
I think this is long overdue.
This just felt like the right time.
To be where he's been.
I have mixed emotions.
To see what he saw.
I'm just excited to be closer to my dad.
To finish what their father began.
I'm going to be thinking about him all the way.
The climb for closure.
The first year was really tough. It was really, really, really tough. And then, you know, you get comfortable enough that you can get through it.
Barb Repass may never make it back to Sloan Peak. Wally Summers was her husband, the Army man she fell in love with in 1965, the man she married in 1966. The couple had 2 boys named Dave and Steve.
And here's one with Steve and the salmon he caught, and that's in front of the house.
And together they lived in this modest home in Shoreline for nearly a decade.
Wally was one of these people that go through life without making any enemies.
Everybody loved him. I mean, he was just a real kind, just had that look where you just think, oh, that's a nice guy.
He was a nice guy who just happened to have 2 loves, his family and the outdoors.
My dad, certainly, he was more like me. I kind of have this obsessive compulsiveness to be outdoors and to maximize, you know, every minute that we have on this earth.
He'd run all over and train, you know, and practiced climbing up the tree in our backyards and rappelling back down just to practice that. And then he started started climbing mountains.
And when he started, he couldn't stop.
It really took hold of him, and that's something that he wanted to do for the rest of his life, I think.
The Cascades were Wally's playground. Thankfully, he had a journal to keep track of it all.
Keyes Peak.
His last entry was August 25th, 1973.
Climbing with Roger via Curry Gap. It took 16 hours from car to car.
Long approach, snow and rock, nearly caught in a snowslide on our descent. Weather clear and cool.
First climb with Roger. Some rock climbing and hard snow. Left car at 6 a.m., returned at 10 p.m.
2 weeks after conquering Keyes Peak, Wally was ready for more.
I think the story with my uncle was that they had talked about their interest in climbing Sloan Peak.
The date was September 9th, 1973.
I think they may have scoped it out the week before.
He planned to climb with his brother Ed.
He went over to pick up his brother, and his brother didn't feel well, and so Ed just assumed that Wally would have turned around and gone back home, but he decided to go on his own.
Thinking about my dad climbing that mountain by himself is unbelievable.
After leaving his brother's house in the Seattle area, Wally drove 2 hours east, the middle of the wilderness, in the heart of the North Cascades.
He always wrote on the blackboard where he was going and what time he'd be back.
That morning, Summers parked his vehicle at the trailhead and took off. He was supposed to be back that night.
When he didn't get home, I knew something was wrong, because he would have done everything he could to get back, to let me know that he was, okay, and that he'd get back home.
By about 9 o'clock, he should have been home by then, or at least contacted us or called us that he was going to be late.
I was up all night, worried, just sick. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to, what I should do about calling Grandma and Grandpa, and so I waited till about 4 in the morning, and then I called him, and I just said, well, he didn't come home.
Still to come.
You just have to wonder exactly what happened.
A search for Summers.
I started getting nervous.
As a wife and 2 boys wait for Dad.
Our only guess was, he could have, ended up in the glacier.
And later,
this could have been the route that my dad took.
With their families by their side, the 2 brothers are back at Sloan Peak.
This just felt like the right time.
Ready for takeoff.
To honor our dad and to finish the climb that he began.
The climb for closure continues.
I never did go up there. I stayed home with the boys. I kept everything as normal as I possibly could, and that helped.
Barb Repass didn't know what to do. Dave was 4, Steve was 6, and their dad was gone.
The boys and I, were really, it was the 3 of us. We were a unit, and we stayed close to, to each other.
A lot of us didn't deal with it real well back in the 70s. People didn't talk about loss, didn't talk about traumatic experiences and that sort of thing.
But by the time Steve started the 1st grade, his dad went missing, and his classmates wanted to know what happened.
That was tough. He had a really, really rough time. So he felt really different than everybody else at his school.
I think for a long time we just were in denial. We didn't want to deal with the fact that, he was lost.
Boy 3, boy 1. Tell him to try to get on the main branch of the road that he came in on. Get onto that spur onto the main branch.
Everett Mountain Rescue looked for weeks.
The majority of the people searched crevasses on the glacier and went up on the mountain. And the first day, I'm pretty sure they went to the summit itself.
I got the notice that he had not returned. I just decided that I better go see what I could do. And so I came here to this area and joined the search and rescue effort.
There was a Navy helicopter that was circling around and looking at, I believe they were looking in the crevasses and up on the sides of the mountain.
Many of the crevasses had overhangs to where if you walked out on the edge of the overhang, it would be very easy to go in.
We looked in every crevasse we could have. We went down in every place that we could, but we just wasn't located.
I think the glacier probably claimed him.
Back at home in Shoreline, Dave didn't understand.
He thought something, Dad would come back. And I had to finally sit down and, but he wouldn't believe me. He just wouldn't believe me.
I have a teddy bear that I would leave on the top of my bed, and it would be looking for my dad. The teddy bear would never sleep with me. I would never hold it. He would be on the edge. He was always watching out for him.
And it's hard to talk about it. It still is. It hurts real bad.
He was never found. Yeah, I guess that's very unusual for somebody that they'll look for a long time and not find him.
No one knows for sure what happened on September 9th, 1973. Perhaps this mountain rescue bulletin says it all. The fate of Wally Summers remains a mystery.
I think that, a lot of us just kind of clammed up and we didn't really want to face those painful memories.
It took 30 years for the Summers to talk about Wally's disappearance.
Steve and I were really sheltered from all the sadness and grieving, and to some extent we still haven't really dealt with it. As I became older and became a dad, it sort of hit me more about the impact of a disappearance, a death in the family can have on the family, and especially your kids.
But Dave knows this story is different. It's tough to talk about because no one knows what happened.
And this is the route that he took, the corkscrew route.
No one knows for sure.
Either the snow opened up underneath him and he fell in a crevasse that way, or he just lost his balance and slipped into a crevasse.
Not everyone's convinced. Larry Blanchard heard people talk about murder.
There are different types of people that live up here in the mountains, and you'll find them living in tents at the end of roads or at trailheads.
Some thought someone on the mountain might have killed him. But Barb Repass heard something completely different.
And I would just be so shocked and appalled by that people would actually think that he would just take off and go and get a new identity or something, you know. I mean, I was really surprised by that people would say that, but quite a few people told me that.
Though Barb believes that isn't true, she couldn't prove them wrong. But after 40 years, Wally's boys know one thing for certain.
We just want to be in the place where he died, and he's laying here somewhere.
So that's why they came back to Bedall Campground, the same place they held his memorial just weeks after his disappearance. But instead of a memorial service,
start hiking from about right here.
The boys came to climb. Everett Mountain Rescue led the search effort for Wally Summers. And in just a few short hours, 2 volunteers from that same organization will lead Wally's kids to the same place their father was lost.
The concern is the weather forecast. We got forecasted for thunderstorms at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So I wanted you to examine your motivations. Option number 1 is to say, hey, it's nice meeting you. Sayonara. Option number 2, we go tonight, like 2 a.m. or something like that. And we go with day packs and we just go through the night. We're there just to serve them and safely guide them to where they want to go.
My preference would be to just leave at 2 a.m. and start hiking and get down a reasonable amount of time and then sleep later.
To be able to help Steve and Dave with this experience and situation and help perhaps find some closure is important to me.
I don't think we would have done this without their help. I wouldn't trust my lack of experience on a climb like this where our dad died. It's not something that I take lightly at all.
Maybe the feeling that they get from standing there will get them closer to an understanding of why their dad did what he did.
When we return,
I'm excited, ready to go.
Dreams become reality.
This is, long overdue.
You're watching The Climb for Closure. Dave and Steve Summers have dreamed of this day for 40 years.
Sweet.
They took off at 1:45 in the morning.
I still think about my dad making this drive up, and it's probably where his car was.
It's going to provide some closure for my family, and I've always wondered what it's like on the peak, but this is I think going to be a real big accomplishment and a real bonding experience for my brother and I.
Well, it's 3 o'clock and we've reached the waterfall. There's Dave coming down. Hey Dave. All right.
It's a 6,000-foot climb to the top. It's a long wait for their families.
It's raw right now, but I know they're safe and they're with really safe people. I think it will give them a lot of peace to go up there and see where their dad was. And as we were driving out here, Steve said, if you have to go, this is the place to do it. And he was doing what he loved.
Steve and Jane Summers have 2 boys named Luke and Zach. Dave and Janie have a 3-year-old girl.
This is Sloan Summers.
Named after the peak.
When I was pregnant, we talked about names, and almost instantly Sloan came up, just in an effort to pay tribute to Wally and this beautiful mountain.
She may be only 3.
Sloan Summers.
But she already knows a whole lot.
Where's Daddy today?
Climbing Sloan Peak.
I know that this will be a day that Dave will never forget. It'll probably be one of the best experiences of his life.
They prepared and they're doing it very safely. We felt good about this.
The men figure if the weather cooperates and they stay on schedule, they'll tag the summit at 9:30. But as it turns out, it's gorgeous and they're ahead of schedule.
For Dave and Steve, this is, something that's always been in the back of their minds that they would like to do, and to really make it happen took a lot of work. So I just feel great pride.
Hello, can you hear us?
Before they took off, they left their families a radio. And at 9 a.m. around the campfire, they listened.
Where are you?
James, we are on the summit.
As Summers reached the top.
That's wonderful! Is Dave there?
When we return,
I didn't make it to the top.
Where's Dave?
Yeah, I'm not disappointed, but it was hard.
And why didn't he reach Sloan Summit?
I said I can't do it. It didn't feel right.
As the climb for closure continues. Mother Nature was on Summers' side after all. It was a gorgeous morning on Sloan Summit, and now all that's left is a 5-hour hike to the bottom. But because cell phones don't work on the mountain, in Port Angeles, Barb Repass didn't know if her sons were safe.
It scared me to death. I just thought about them all day long and what could happen, and they have with their young families.
But she knew that's why the guys brought the guides.
That's where we came from. And that's where we're going to.
As the men made their way down,
well, we have the whole family. We have our son Jim, our daughter Kathy.
Family made its way back.
We wanted to be here, even though his dad is 92 now, and and I'm a little bit younger.
I'm Walter Summers, and Wally was named after me.
No one knew they were coming, but Wally Summers' parents said this is something they wouldn't miss.
It's just very meaningful for me to have this opportunity where David has been able to get this together.
This isn't the couple's first trip back to the mountain. In 1974, just a year after his disappearance, they climbed Sloan Peak, all the way to the glacier, the same place they think their son died.
And we slept up there and looked at the stars and the moon. Sloan Peak is a beautiful place and not a bad climb to the top of it, but I wouldn't walk on the glacier.
They didn't make it to the top, but Walter and Violet Summers found peace on their journey. And though it's taken 40 years, peace is what these men are after.
Brothers Summers, friends for life.
When Dave wanted to do this climb, I was real hesitant. It scared me to death. I've never been up there, and I just can't do it. It's just too emotional for me, and I didn't want to show my emotions in front of Zach and Luke and Sloan. So I just made the choice of staying home and not going.
Though Barb never made it, she was relieved to learn that Dave and Steve are safe. After 13 hours and 5 minutes, the climb's complete and the men are back at the trailhead.
I definitely wouldn't have done the climb without having these two gentlemen with us. They made it successful.
We were expecting the worst and hoping for the best, and things worked out well for us.
For me, that's by far the most impressive glacier I've seen.
For the Summers brothers, closure means understanding.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed, but it was hard.
Even if Dave didn't make it past the glacier.
To see it is a massive, massive thing. It's just huge. And yes, it was way too much for me to handle. And sat there for a little while and thought about it. And yeah, I said I can't do it. It didn't feel right.
And I completely understood his decision. To see where my dad most likely passed away was hard.
I think about how this climb must have been nagging at Dave and Steve all their lives, something that they felt needed to be done, to make the climb that took their father, to see life come full circle,
with them now men raising their children and living the lives their father never was able to.
He would be thrilled to have this family.
It takes great bravery, great courage to climb a mountain. And it takes even more bravery to tackle the mountain of grief of a missing father. I hope for Dave and Steve that today brought freedom and peace to their hearts.
I'm really glad we had this opportunity, but I have really no interest in summiting again.
In my heart, I knew, you know, their dad was watching over them and they were going to be okay.
I don't regret not making it up there. I think I made my peace up there, and I don't know if I can go back.
To finally complete the climb and to find some closure, I think, is the greatest thing that we were able to do this weekend.
Wally Summers would be so proud. 4 decades after his death, his dreams and his love live on.
It gives me peace to know that that's where he is, because he loved it so much. I mean, most people don't get to choose where they die.
He's a man who found peace on the mountain, and on this day, his boys did too.
I feel very, very fortunate to have finished what my dad was not able to finish himself.
It's a journey that's lasted 40 years, a story to last a lifetime.